it seems that it's much easier for most people that I meet to be kind to other people than to be kind to themselves, especially where people have issues with karma, a lot of suppressed negativity. It can be very, very hard to be kind to yourself, or it goes in fits and spurts. There'll be a little bit of kindness and then a whole lot of self-punishment. So it's really important to be aware of the effect that heavy criticism and self-punishment and real unkindness towards anybody has on them. We know now that being really unkind and critical and punishing towards children doesn't help them. We also know that being completely like, I don't care what you do, completely unstructured, unboundaried, that also doesn't help children. So it's not about swinging to the other end of the pendulum. But if you understand that a child is learning and growing, and in the process of learning and growing, there are many things that we do that appear to be mistakes or that are wrong or that are failures. And simply when that happens, there's a reason. Maybe you don't know. Maybe that child doesn't actually know, even though you've told them, even though you've shown them, they don't actually know how to do it. You can think of all the times where you see this often in films, where parents or teachers have been really horrible to children because they couldn't write their letters. And you know that at that moment, that child doesn't know how to do that very well yet, or possibly that they're so afraid because of the environment in which they're operating that even if they do know how to do it, they can't do it because they're so afraid of doing it wrong, and then they do it wrong. We all know that. We've all had that experience somewhere in our life. The same happens when you treat yourself with unkindness. And you can put a kind of performance angst onto yourself so that even things that you could naturally do quite well, you can mess up. And it usually comes in an area of your life where you feel inadequate or where you feel that you're not managing very well. So where you feel confident, of course, it's not an issue. But most people have somewhere where they don't feel confident. So whether that's in relationship or whether it's in your health or whether it's around money or in business or around your purpose or something else, where you don't feel confident is often where you'll find yourself really unkind towards yourself. And the effect that that has is just like the effect that it has on a small child. One of the things that I find most commonly is that people say, well, I should know better. I've learnt this already. I've been told. I know what I'm supposed to do. That's what I often hear. I know what I'm supposed to do. But there's this environment of intolerance and unkindness around any kind of failure or letting yourself down or not doing it quite as well as you'd like to. And then it puts so much pressure on you that you actually suppress your own performance or your own ability or capability in that area. It seems that we tend to think it's okay to do that to ourselves, even if we wouldn't do that to other people. And in fact, what I see often is people who are exceptionally kind to other people and exceptionally unkind to themselves. It's almost as though the kinder I am to other people, the more that will make up for the way that I treat myself. Or maybe not so conscious, but I feel so bad about myself, deeply, subtly, that I have to somehow be a really nice person to balance how bad I feel about myself. And so you find people taking all the weight of the world on their shoulders, taking responsibility for other people, trying to fix everything for everybody else, and unable to just sit and be with themselves because it feels too painful or too uncomfortable. This might sound extreme, but it's not extreme. It's actually the daily behavior of people. And it continues, like even when you've learned quite a lot about this, you'll still uncover yourself doing some variation of this pattern. Most people who I work with are karma payers. So they have a lot of karma, and therefore they have a lot of karma, and they're very determined in this lifetime to be different from however they've been in previous lives. And so they go out of their way to be good people. But inside there's so much conflict, because there's such a feeling of being a bad person inside. And it goes deep, 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 deep. So to create an environment of kindness around yourself allows you to begin to soften and let all that deep, dark, heavy stuff, that old energy and dark consciousness, come to the surface and come to the light. So that's one of the very important reasons for being kind. The way you treat yourself is an energy that you emit essentially to the whole world. It's your contribution to the world. So when you're unkind to yourself, when you're heavily critical of yourself, when you are mean to yourself, when you're punishing towards yourself. And I know some very highly aware people who've been doing spiritual growth stuff for 20 years or more, who punish themselves on a daily basis and then try to eliminate all the uncomfortable feelings that arise from that. So when we do any of those kinds of things, that is the energy that you put out from yourself. That is, it's not all of the energy, because it's not all of your thoughts all day, but to the extent that you think or feel like that, that is your contribution to the world. Your contribution is punishment, criticism, heaviness, down on yourself. And what you'll find as a result of that is that people around you are also critical and heavy and punishing, often of you. You also create an environment around you where people feel that they should be like that of themselves, because that's the energy that you give off. Okay? So that's not a very generous contribution. And it doesn't fit very well with somebody who wants to make the world a better place. And so it's worth really examining yourself to see how much you're still doing that, perhaps consciously. And if you can, examine yourself to see the extent to which that's going on subconsciously. You'll find that usually in self-sabotage, in kind of heaviness around yourself, in feelings of unworthiness, undeserving, unlovable, all of that territory is where you'll find it. And you'll find it where you find shame. So if you want to be kind to yourself, it's important to allow the shame and the things that you don't like to actually come to the surface and to be able to see them. If somebody else presents themselves constantly in a positive light to you, and you know that there's stuff going on in their life, but they never speak about it, how does that feel? It feels insincere. It feels like this isn't the real person. It casts doubt in our minds. It's interesting. There's been so much emphasis in recent years on being positive, and I find this a lot amongst business owners and entrepreneurs, that they present this constant barrage of positivity about their business and everything they're going to achieve and everything they're going to do. And there was a time when that was quite effective. It was almost like you could barrage your way through and just sort of force things into being. And I listened to a guy, I was at a talk the other day, or an interview with a guy who he's a really nice guy. He's built the $30 million business, furniture. It's importing and building furniture. It's different kind of furniture, not average type of furniture. He spent 10 years doing what he called a vanilla furniture business, with pine furniture and stuff like that. And then he decided he wanted to do what he would love to do, and allowed him to travel and buy furniture all over the world and things like that. Really nice guy. Mostly just built this business on sincerity. Just did what he wanted to do. Worked it out by the seat of his pants. Every question that he was asked, like, what was the formula you used for this? How did you do your growth? Did you grow the right number of branches at the same time? And he said, no, just people came into my shop and said, hey, I'd like to run a shop like this too. And so we'd say, okay, you can kind of have a franchise. Let's shake our hands and have a beer, and we'll give you a CD and show you how to do it, and away you go. And he built this whole franchise. There were, I think, 40 franchises before the GFC, and then dropped back to 20, all on basically conversation in a shop, a handshake, and a beer. No contracts, no agreements, nothing. Just goodwill and people coming in and saying, hey, I heard something about your shop. I'd really like to do something like that. Really interesting. But there was one thing he said that struck me. He just said that I like, you could see the effort that he has to make to keep things positive. And so he cuts anybody and everything out of his life that disturbs any sense of positivity. And the problem with that is that there comes a point where it becomes unsustainable, because you just have to force your way through. Now, I think that it has worked to create a certain level of success in the past. But the problem with that success, as we're finding, is that there's been a very big cost to it. There's been usually a big cost to the individual, and you could see that in the way he answered some questions. Just this, so much pain and so much hard time beneath the positivity. And we didn't talk at all about personal things. Well, yeah, but there were little throwaway comments that showed how much sacrifice of his personal life there'd been because of that, when you just push everything through. So what I notice these days is that people are looking for a much more honest form of business. They're not looking for you to have cracked everything before you start. They're not looking for you to just be impossibly positive. In fact, what I notice is that when people are like that, when they present that kind of front, there is instant doubt in the minds of the people who are listening to them. And because I'm very sensitive to those kinds of things, I literally can see it happening. I can see the doubt coming in. I can see the questions that people ask, where they're trying to establish, what's the reality of this? And we all know that. We feel it when somebody has that barrage of positivity. There's something that goes off that immediately says, what's actually going on? What's the truth about this? What's underneath the surface? And if you look at marketing, there's this huge wave of towards honest, authentic marketing. And there's increasing allergy to the kind of marketing that we've had in the past that was just kind of bombard people with the positivity. And especially women are extremely sensitive about this, I notice. And women going into business, many of them will not do old style marketing, even if it costs them some business. They're not willing to be so abusive to their audience. And so there is a new ethic growing in business that has a much more honest, much more sincere, and beneath the surface, much kinder vibe to it, which is really interesting to see. And then you have people like Bernadette Jiwa, Seth Godin, who consult to huge organizations as well as to many smaller businesses, constantly talking about the businesses that are successful are the businesses that connect with people. And you cannot connect with people if you just present this front of everything's perfect and everything's under control and everything's positive, and it's this kind of insincere front, and there's no warmth in that. So there's an honesty growing. Obviously that also is matched in having the businesses becoming more ethical, taking care of more different aspects of the bottom line, not only money, because if you only take care of money, then you have to push through, because this can be so many negative things going on all around you. You have to close your eyes to them to be able to create that kind of success. I'm dealing with a business at the moment where the CEO is very numbers driven and kind to the people. He supports the people who've supported him, who've been loyal to him. He's obviously been hurt sometimes. And so the thing that he's learned is to protect people who are loyal to him. And it looks like the whole business, all his focus on numbers is driven simply by this desire to take care of people who've been loyal to him. He has other people around him who are more in touch with newer ways of doing business. And it's much more about the way you treat people. It's about being kind. It's about seeing that when you create a positive culture and a good environment, a really open, sincere environment, the numbers are going to be good anyway. Very different culture from the CEO. And it's really interesting to hear the conversations that go on around that as they try to change the culture of the company to be more modern. If we look right on the front of the curve, the requirement to be kind to the environment, to be kind to people, will require us also to be kind to ourselves. It will not be possible to run a business like that and then be cruel to yourself, or to be that overwhelmingly positive, everything's all right, where everyone can read immediately that it's not. One of the things that's fascinated me and drove me crazy for a long time is how people who didn't know very much could just sit and make a video, for example, and they're all over the show really, and they don't have much professionalism, and they're just really honest, really, really honest. And then their videos would go viral and people would be crazy about it. And you'd make a video that was really professional and the message was clear and you weren't messing around at the beginning, and nobody really cares. Now, I know there's more to it than that, but there's been an extraordinary shift in that over the last 5, maybe even 10 years, towards this real honesty with ourselves. And that goes with being kind. If you're kind to yourself, you can allow yourself to be seen as you are. You can be sincere with people and they can really feel you. They can feel you as a human being and connect with you as a human being. And when you make genuine connections with people, that connects everything in your business and it connects things in your life. So it's not necessary to hold that front of everything being perfect, behind which there's a whole lot of unkindness towards yourself and suppression of the imperfection. It's actually much easier and much more effective to have that kindness that allows you to be you allows people to connect with you. And it's interesting how scary that is in business still for so many people. I watch people put up a front. The minute they go into their business, the front is up. Even really very honest, sincere people, they still put up this front. Often the front is almost exactly the same as them. So there's this kind, really genuine person inside, loving, very much about connection, and has really good strong values. And then they put this veneer on of a kind person with really strong values, a veneer that is exactly the same or almost exactly the same as them, but it's a veneer and it's there to protect them. That I find more and more often, people with this very professional, it's like a photocopy of themselves. They just put it between themselves and the world to protect them. And then it just creates a vibration. Like, I can't let myself be seen because there are things wrong with me. And I don't want you to see what's wrong with me. So I'll put up a front and then I'll name the things that are wrong with me, even. I'll kind of do the right thing, but I'm just not going to let you connect. So that stems from a lack of acceptance of self, which contains a great deal of unkindness. So have a look at yourself and see how you really view yourself and how you treat yourself. Think about when you're in a good space, not when you're feeling ratty and irritated, how you are with children, how you know that it's right to be with children, how you know it's right to be with somebody who's struggling with something. And look at yourself to see if you're like that with yourself. Most people aren't. Often when you've learned a bit, you are on the surface, but underneath there's a whole lot of stuff still that you haven't addressed. So when you're kind, that heavier stuff there's a space where it can come to the surface. It can start to be dealt with. I talked to somebody a couple of days ago who's done a lot of spiritual work and did the first karma clearing. He's had a lot of resistance to even talking about karma. Didn't really fit with his spiritual view of the world. But he recognized when we did it just how much of this suppressed kind of energy was held within him. And the next day he said, okay, can we do the next bit, Sarah? It was like, oh, I can, now it's beginning. I've allowed it to the surface and actually it didn't kill me. And I can see that it's going to be helpful. And he will no longer have to suppress all of that stuff, which has been such unbelievably hard work for him for such a long time. So when you can when you can allow this darker stuff to come to the surface because there's an environment of kindness and love around it, then you can actually open yourself up and change the underlying energy. And that will gradually, not overnight, it will gradually allow you to go out into the world, do whatever it is you're doing, and get results that are kind. And in the end, that's the only thing that's important now. There is no point in creating a fantastic amount of personal success at the expense of family, the environment, other people, because that is at the expense of yourself. So we have to find a way to do this, and it means building businesses on very different foundations from what we've been used to.